Hello YouTube, welcome back to Happy Hour. Today we're going to look at one of the two distilleries on the Isle of Orkney. You got a 50-50 guess. Stay tuned. Hello YouTube, welcome back to Happy Hour. So if you guessed Highland Park, your 50-50 was correct. So yeah, today we're going to do a little review of the Highland Park 12-year-old. And I have a small sample. I generally don't like doing reviews of samples, but I figured I have the 18-year-old sample and I have the 12-year-old. So I've never ever had the 18-year-old before. So it'll be interesting to do a little head-to-head and a little taste side-by-side and see what we come up with. So yeah, Highland Park, I think pretty popular distillery. I've been aware of them for many, many years. They were one of the first, I don't know, dozen or 10 or dozen kind of names that came up. They're pretty popular, I think, around the world. But yeah, they're kind of interesting. They're from the Isle of Orkney. It's a pretty small whiskey spot on the map there in Scotland. I think there's only one other Scotch distillery, and it's Scapa. I did see there were a couple other distilleries on Orkney, but I think they distill other products. I think I saw vodkas and gins and whatnot. So yeah, for me, Highland Park 12, I haven't had that many bottles of it. I enjoy it. I have historically enjoyed it. Like I said, it was kind of, I would say maybe one of the first 8 or 10 brands that really stuck in my head. What I really liked about it first was I think it was one of the first peated whiskeys that I tried, other than maybe, you know, Johnny Walker Black or Double Black. Even Black Label is lightly peated. But yeah, I think it was one of the first single malts that I had that was really, you know, had a decent amount of peat in it. But yeah, it's a really nice whiskey. Now, you know, Highland Park is, I know they're getting a bit of an interesting, kind of a crappier reputation, I think. I don't want to say crappy, that's a bit of a harsh word, but they're being a little bit odd lately, I think. I think a lot of people, I get this impression from reading a lot of reviews and seeing a lot of videos. They're doing this whole Viking thing over the last few years. It's kind of hard to keep track of, you know, at least I guess they have their core range still. In fact, they got a 10-year-old now, I believe. They got the 12. They just came out again with the 15 again. They got the 18. They got all these wackadoodle Viking name things and special releases. And, you know, there was one even that I saw like had like a Marshall amplifier on it. I don't know. You know, whatever. It's cool. But yeah, I think I kind of started to lose, I lost track of them a little bit after that. And this was the first bottle that I've actually bought in probably a good 6 or 7 years. Yeah, the stuff that I had before this was the old, you know, the old bottlings, which I remember I enjoyed. Now, I've heard people say that the older bottlings are better than the newer bottlings. I don't know if that's true, obviously. I don't have anything to compare against. And it was so long since I had the older bottlings, the last bottle that I had before this, that I couldn't, there was nothing obvious when I tasted it that I was like, oh, this is totally different than the last one. It had a lot of the similarities, it had the notes that I remembered specifically, or the tastes and the flavors that made me like this to begin with. So I just bought this little sample of the 18-year-old when I place an order overseas. One of my many orders that I waste money on, but it's not a waste. I love it. But yeah, I wanted to get the sample because it's not cheap. We can talk about price, I guess, quickly now. But the 12-year-old here around me is about $53 to $55. Which I think is reasonable for a 12-year-old single malt Scotch, and it is quite unique. We'll get into it obviously in a minute, but the 18-year-old is pushing the kind of $160, $170 mark. So if it's really, really good, I'm not adverse to paying that kind of money. That's a pretty specialty bottle for me. I generally try not to break the $200 mark very often at all, but I will do it for a special occasion bottle. So like I said, I wanted to get the sample, try it, and see if I like it that much. We'll go from there. And hey, to be able to taste them side by side, like I always say, even better. So let's jump into the 12. You know what, the 12, you know why I think the 12 is so popular? And it's not why I think it's maybe fairly obvious why it is that popular, is I think that it has a little bit of everything. It has something for everybody. It's kind of like the Johnny Walkers. I think it's better than Johnny Walkers for most of them, but it's kind of like, you know, like for a non-blend, it's got the sherry notes. It's got a little bit of peat. It's not overly peated by any stretch. It's not an Isla. And it's not even... It's like a sweet peat. I think it's a really nice balance with the sweetness, the sherry sweetness, and the peat. It kind of gives it kind of like a sweet barbecue note. But yeah, it's got a little bit of everything. It's a little bit sweet. It's got a little bit of the standard classic bourbon, bourbon whiskey notes. It's got a little bit of the peat. It's got everything. Actually, the more I get into it, the more peat I get. But again, it's not a punch-in-your-face peat. It's a really nicely well-rounded, sweet peat. Yeah, it's nice. It's good. I'm going to nose the 18. All right, I haven't even had a nose of this yet. Smelt it. It's a little bit darker, one would hope. 6 years older. Oh. Wow. Okay. First instinct, so two sniffs. It's the evolution of what this is. I have found with when I've had the luxury of tasting older whiskeys, I've done a few times where I've been able to do like a 12 and an 18 or whatever and a 21 of the same brand is ideal because you can really see how the same distillate or the same liquids age with that many more years in the barrel. But even just generally, it kind of I feel like when I get to the 18 and the 21-year-olds, I get this nuttiness. I noticed it in the Johnny Walker Blue Label. There's almost like a pistachio or like a creamy nuttiness. So, compared to the 12, I get a little bit of peat. I get less peat. I get a little less peat on the 18, but it's deeper and it's everything you would expect the age difference to allow. It's a little more rounded. The edges are round off. There's some slight, again, on its own, I don't get this, but back to back, there's just a little more kind of that ether ethanol kick, a little more of the alcohol kick on the 12. On the 18, the edges are round off on that even a bit more. Actually, probably look, they're both... I think they're both 43%. Yeah, they're both 43%. So the ABV is the same. Yeah, that's really, really fascinating. This one maybe more than any other back-to-back I've done. And maybe it's just my mind, maybe because I know that they're the same whiskey, or the same whiskeys. They're, arguably the same whiskey, just 6 years older. This is a perfect evolution. This tastes like an older version of this. It's a little nuttier, it's a little deeper, it's a little darker. It has all the same balanced notes. I'm getting a little bit of the spices still, a little bit of the peat, sherry, a little bit of that apple that I get from straight bourbon barrel aged stuff. These are both aged, I think. I think the website's a little bit, it's not very specific, but it says something like basically X sherry, European oak and American oak. Seasoned X American oak and European oak barrels or whatever. So a little bit of everything. Wow, they both smell really nice. Okay, I'm going to taste the 12. This is a really good whiskey. Every time I have it, I kind of, like I said, I kind of forget about it for a while, but when I do come back to it, I'm kind of reminded of just really why I think it is so popular. Like I said, it's kind of a little bit of everything. I get a little bit of the classic whiskey, Scotch whiskey, bourbon notes. So a little bit of the apples and a little bit of the barrel spice. I get a little bit of the sherry. It's not overwhelmingly sherry, at least for me. I'm used to I really like heavily sherried whiskeys, so it's not overpoweringly sherried for me. For some, it might be. And a little bit of the peat, a little bit of the smoky barbecue peat, a little bit of spice, almost like a spicy fruitcake a little bit, but it's just really well-rounded. It's an easy drinker. It's 43%, which is, I think, a decent ABV. Has just a little bit of extra kick to it. And it's $53, $54. I think it's a good bargain. I like it. All right, let's jump into the 18. It's almost getting sweeter the more I smell it.
Okay. So I really do get a lot of the similarities, but it is definitely, I get more of almost like a peanut butter, pistachio butter, cashew butter, like this creamy nuttiness, along with a little bit of the sherry and a little bit of the fruit, a little bit of the fruit notes that I would get, the higher fruit notes that I would get from a, from a strictly bourbon aged, ex-bourbon barrel aged whiskey. This is really reminding me of, and again, I could probably side by side this. I'll bring up Blue Label again. I wasn't a huge fan of the Blue Label when I first tried it. I did have it a few more times after that, and it really tended to grow on me more. And this is reminding me a lot of that, at least a lot of the memories that I started to get from that pistachio nut and kind of dark, nutty sweetness, which is really fascinating. Again, the more and more I try these older whiskeys, I find that those are a common thread that I get through most of them. Yeah, that's really quite nice. I wish I had more to open to kind of let it sit and open up a little bit. I got a couple of drops left in this little bottle, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. So let me go back to the 12 for a second. Yeah, it's just a little bit, again, going back now from the 18 to the 12. This is like fruitier and spicier and younger. Go figure. Well, I'll break it down to this. I think this really is a no-brainer to at least have on your shelf or try. I've heard people talk about the 12-year-old specifically because I think it's probably their most popular. Say the old one was better, the new one's better. What the hell are they doing now? I'll leave that again to the experts. I've had the old one and I enjoyed it. I have the new one and I enjoy it too. I think for its price point, I think it fits a really nice place on your bar. It's relatively unique and interesting in the fact that it's a 12-year-old, relatively inexpensive single malt from a unique part of Scotland that has a little bit of the sherry influence, a little bit of the bourbon barrel influence, and that little bit of peat. I think especially for beginners that maybe haven't or are interested in getting into peatier whiskeys and really haven't, maybe don't want to make the leap to the Islay, to the Lafroigs and the Ardbegs, I think this would be a great place to jump into to see if the peat smoke kind of agrees with you. But yeah, I think for $55, I think it's definitely worth a spot on the bar. Now this guy here, this is a little bit tougher. This is really, really nice. Again, I really hate to I certainly don't make any final judgments off of a sample. Samples are really meant to sample, I guess, for me at least, to pique my interest enough to maybe want to splurge on the bottle. And this one I'm on the fence of right now. It's like I said, it's $160, $170. By the time you roll taxing on that, you're pushing $2 bills. So I want to see how the rest of this goes. I know there's not much of it, but is really nice and it's really interesting. It's not blowing me away. I guess I'll just say that for that price. I have a hard time equating. Like I'll say something, wow, that's really, really nice. It's yummy, yummy, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then the number pops in my head. I'm like, oh, maybe it's not that good. And I don't know that I'm there yet, but for $200, like I'm just thinking of other bottles that push that number for me, like, upwards of 180, like Glendronach 21. Like Glendronach 21 is about a $180 bottle for me. I think I'll take that every day of the week over this. I don't know. Glendronach 21 is the one that comes to mind because it's roughly the same price. I'll take Glendronach 21 over this. I know they're totally different whiskeys. But yeah, it's hard for me to kind of pull the number, to unequate the number from the whiskey. We'll see. If you liked, please click like. And yeah, if you'd like to subscribe, that'd be cool too. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching Happy Hour. See ya.